Imagine walking into a boardroom. Executives proudly declare they're all in on AI. They've allocated big budgets, installed expensive AI tools. The room is buzzing with excitement of future rewards. But a few months later, when you ask, okay, so is it working? The uncomfortable truth is that for most businesses, the answer is no. That's according to a recent report published by MIT that's rattled the tech investor community. Billions are being spent on AI. Companies are experiencing AI FOMO, the fear of missing out. But according to that MIT study, 95% of organizations report little to no tangible payoff. The frustration is mounting, and the risk of an AI winter, a sudden lack of interest, is real. We'll get into that a bit more later. Still, some companies are getting it right. We'll explore this and more with an AI company in the UAE, and also an expert to share the secrets to winning in AI. All on this episode of Business Extra. I'm your host, Salim Essaid. Let's start with finding out if that really is the case with companies who are offering AI solutions. How are they performing and what the experience has been for their clients? For this, I'm joined now by Mohammad Abu Sheikh, founder and CEO of CNTXT AI, a UAE-based data and AI solutions company. Mohammad, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Can you start us off by giving us a quick overview of CNTXT AI? What does your company do, and what are your core offerings and platforms?
So basically, CNTXT is a company that gets you AI ready. What does that mean? It means we come into your corporate or enterprise or company, and we really go into your KPIs, your goals, what you're trying to achieve. And we take the full stack from infrastructure to data infrastructure, to model and model infrastructure, and then to application, and then to use case level, right? So we kind of end-to-end AI solutioning, custom tailored for your own companies based on your data and your AI.
Great. So we'll delve into that hierarchy a bit later, but can you start us off with who's interested in AI? Who are your clients in the region, and how are they using your AI solutions?
So everybody's interested in AI nowadays. Every single company nowadays need to run with AI, either to increase their productivity or to increase their revenue or to decrease their costs or operations, right? So AI is in the center of all of that. So whether you're a bank or you're a healthcare organization, which we have many clients in healthcare, banking as well, in different sectors, they really are diving deeper into AI and AI use cases.
But it seems like companies are still trying to figure out, and they're facing many challenges when it comes to actually finding useful cases of either saving money or improving efficiency. So can you describe what are the challenges that you're finding that these companies face while deploying or scaling AI?
I think the reason we exist as a company is that the major problem in most of those enterprises and companies is that they are not AI ready. And what does that mean? For the past 10, 15 years, 20 years, companies, large companies specifically, have been implementing lake houses and data structures for their companies to allow them to harness that data. What people don't recognize is that your data and technical infrastructures don't work as is on AI. So what happens is people try a lot to use the existing infrastructure and the existing data that they have and just throw it onto the AI and say, okay, magic will happen, but magic does not happen. So the biggest challenge is data connectivity, data structuring, and having high quality data, your own high quality data, being trained on your own AI to achieve your own use case, not just the generic overall use case that everybody is running towards.
Okay, I'll need just to break it down a little bit for myself, and I'm assuming our audience as well. Can you first of all explain what are lake houses, and then also what's the difference between old data and new data?
Perfect. So a lake house, if I'll say in layman terms, is a data, literally like a data warehouse, where it's a place where you store huge amounts of data in a structured way. That's the simplest form to put it together.
Is it a data center?
Not a data center. It's not something physical. It's not something you touch. It's a dashboard of sorts, or it's an infrastructure piece of technology of sorts that data sits in, and basically your data is structured in a certain way inside that lake house or warehouse or whatever you want to call it.
It's a storage, basically, and where
a storage unit for your data.
Okay.
A storage unit for you. So what is the difference between old and new data, and why is there a difference to begin with? Because for the past years, we've been storing data in a certain way that simply now AI does not read it in the same way. For AI to comprehend and read and understand the data, it needs context. The way we've been storing data is for the human eye and for the human ability to pull that data out. So before, you needed like data analysts, business analysts, Python coders to be able to call that data correctly and make sure it's presented to you. Now you can do it with a prompt, right? A stroke of you type on your keyboard and things start happening on the screen. That magical part is really a lot of science and a lot of data that is translated in a way where AI can read it in the proper manner. It's as simple as that. Think of it as you have data stored in a language that AI can't read it, and now you need to translate it or put it in the right structure, clean it up, put it in the right structure, and label it, annotate it in the proper manner for AI to be able to consume it and bring out the best results out of it. Because again, we have a very famous saying that says, for your AI, if it's garbage in, it's garbage out.
So do I have it right? Because a lot of companies have said that they've spent large amounts of money in what they call the infrastructure, but it sounds like what you're saying is that they're doing it the wrong way, even if they think that is the right way to invest in that infrastructure and in data that already exists?
So just to clarify it, what they've done before is one thing, and what they need to do moving forward is a completely different thing. And those two things don't necessarily collide, but they need to be complementary. So those data lake houses and the data warehouses and the data infrastructure and the technical infrastructures they've built over the past years, they're great and amazing and so on and so forth, but very quickly they just became outdated. You need something better, newer, faster to deal with AI. AI necessarily does not understand the data the way it's presented to it right now.
So what is the right way to, I guess, generate new data or convert the old data to new data? And then can you explain why most companies are not doing it if they're putting these large amounts of money as investment in AI?
So what is the right way? There are multiple ways to do it. You need a lot of data scientists, you need a lot of ML engineers, you need a lot of expertise in dealing with data to be able to decipher, properly label, properly annotate, and properly make that data usable for your AI. Now, why a lot of people, although they're spending so much money, are failing with those things? And my opinion is, or what I think is, the problem with the markets nowadays is everybody looks for what's shiny, right? And what's shiny is the applications, right? You see something that says something like, I will cut off your operational cost by 95% if you subscribe to my AI. That is going to replace 95% of your staff. On the surface, everybody's like, oh yeah, wow, I can be 10 times more productive, 10 times cheaper, and this sounds amazing. But when you look into it realistically, for this to happen, there's a lot of layers that you've skipped. So there's a lot of layers that you need to have in place. And mostly they just skip it and go directly to the application layer. So it doesn't work. It simply breaks. So you need to think of AI like a layered cake of sorts, right? You want to start with the very bottom layer, which is your compute and infrastructure. And then the layer on top of it, which is your data infrastructure, and this is where very important work needs to happen. Then on top of that, you need your model layer. And then on top of that, you need your application layer. And then on top of that, you start building your use cases, right? What people usually do is they just run to the use case. And then most of the time they say, okay, I'll stitch it together. So I'll bring in 5 or 6 different AI applications and I'll make them work in a sense or so. But that does not happen because those AI applications that you just bought or subscribed to or tried to implement, they don't talk to each other because they're not connected to a deeper layer or a deeper infrastructure of technology that allows them to interact and work in harmony. And that's where a lot of the mishap and the misuse of AI happens. And that's why you see a lot of failures with AIs that are trying to come to the market or so on and so forth.
Got it. I see what you mean. So people are starting at the top of the pyramid, which are the solutions and the benefits, but then they're not building on that foundation, so it's all toppling down. It seems like it's not necessarily new data, but it's packaging and organizing the data that exists so that AI can read it, and that's where the investment stage needs to take place at the beginning. So with that said, a recent MIT report has said that 95% of Gen AI deployments globally have produced 0 returns. Is it because it's still too early, as you mentioned in that pyramid, that we're not at this stage? Maybe it takes years to invest in the data organization, repackaging to be able to find use cases, or are there use cases that can be implemented now?
So I think there are multiple use cases that can be implemented now. I agree with this article completely because we see it with a lot of our clients and a lot of the people that are working in the space and trying to implement AI. And I think the core issue here is is trying to start at the top, and then they don't really care about what's the underlying issues or what are the underlying problems that they need to solve for. But that being said, a lot of those problems we fix for very quickly, especially here in a market like the UAE, right? Where you have the top-down vision and you have government agencies with a lot of budgets and a lot of direction towards make it happen, where you see them investing a lot in the infrastructure, whether let it be data centers, compute, the data infrastructure, and so on and so forth, to make those examples happen. And we've seen the impact that those pilots can actually turn into production level AI and production grade AI if the right roadmap put in place, and if the right investment in the right places are put in place. AI is not very interesting for a lot of people. They think it's the boring bit of AI. But realistically, data is AI.
And you mentioned the region, and I want to see if there's a difference between how the region's operating and using AI versus globally. You mentioned government sounds like subsidies or investments in the foundational aspect of AI. Is that what's happening? That, like, say in the UAE, that they are either educating or allocating budgets to developing or helping companies to develop that foundational AI layer?
I think specifically talking about the UAE, not the rest of the region, because in the rest of the region it's a different case, but specifically talking about the UAE, the push towards AI adoption that's coming from government, like the top-down push that's coming from government to other agencies and so on and so forth, is what is driving this bigger percentage of AI adoption in the UAE specifically.
But what does that look like? How do they actually do that? Because I think that's the big question that people have. How do you actually get companies to use AI right?
So a very quick example, there's one product that we've worked on in the past that does compliance of blueprints, right? So when you want to give out, when you're building a house, you want to give your details to the Baladia or the municipality, you need to go through an extensive process where there is an architect firm involved, and then that architect firm needs to submit it, and then they need to get the feedback, and then usually the feedback takes 6 weeks, 8 weeks to come back, and it's not very detailed, so the whole process takes 3 to 4 months for you to be able to do anything with your house. But now with the new implementation of some of the technologies that we've built and the help of the municipality here in Abu Dhabi, what they're doing is basically they've implemented an AI that's the first layer of interaction with most of those architect firms, right? So now the moment you submit your blueprints, what happens is the AI runs the compliance check, tells you what's right and what's wrong, gives you a very detailed recommendation of what you need to fix for this to become compliant. And why is it not compliant and why is it compliant? Obviously, it works on a very large algorithm of AI and ML and a lot of data that we use to build that. But this pushes the companies to become AI enabled, right? This pushes the architect firms, as an example here, to use AI more and rely more on it in their day-to-day work. And then also makes the life, the municipality's life much easier, because now they don't need 30, 40 people reviewing those documentations and looking at them, and they don't need 6 and 8 weeks of timeline reviews. It's happening immediately. So this makes everyone's lives much better.
Yeah, I think you said the key thing, which we've seen in other industries as well, like crypto, when something hasn't established its clear guidelines yet, having step-by-step compliance policies that companies must abide by, which kind of educates them in a way, right, about how to invest in the foundation of AI properly so that they don't have those problems in the future. So yeah, that's, I think, just really reflective of what could put the UAE ahead and compared globally. And in your opinion, what should business leaders keep in mind when investing in AI, R&D, and long-term infrastructure?
I think I have a bit of a controversial opinion on this, right? Because a lot of business leaders that we sit with, they just want AI because this is what people are saying nowadays, right? They're saying it's the future, which it is. And I completely agree with that. And it is the future. It's a wave to come and so on and so forth. But the thing here is your clients or the people focus on why the AI is important, right? So you're trying to implement AI to make people's lives better, to make your services better, to make bigger impact, bigger value, and so on and so forth. A lot of the time, people lose sight of that. They lose sight of what's the value that I'm delivering with AI. And the big question becomes here is it really AI that's delivering that value for me? Like, does it really need to be AI that's delivering that value? Because a lot of the time I see those business leaders obsessing about having AI do a certain thing in a certain way and so on and so forth. But when you really look at the use case and what they're trying to accomplish with that use case, they forget that as an end user or as the end consumer, I don't really care about if this was built by AI or built by whoever it is, or if this was delivered by AI or any other piece of technology. I really care about the impact, or I really care about the value that I'm getting out of it. So I think instead of just thinking about how do I fit AI into everything that I do, I think it should be the other way around. How do I build everything I do around AI, right? Where it enhances everything that I'm doing. At the same time, I'm still delivering the value that I need to be delivering to my clients and to my users and so on and so forth.
Mohammad, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
We'll be right back.
What are you listening to? Does it sound anything like this? How about this? Or maybe something farther off the beaten path, like this. However you might define the Arabic music you're listening to, that is, if you want to put labels on it, we've got it covered here on our new podcast from The National. Or maybe you just might fall in love with some sounds that are totally new to you. I'm Salim Essaid, music reporter for The National in Abu Dhabi. And this is Tarab, a new podcast exploring the Middle East's dynamic and evolving music scene through candid conversations with some of the region's most compelling artists.
To conceive an album from day one, know where we're going.
I love talking about this city so much.
We lack, seriously, symphonic works that represent our beauty.
Reconnect also to the past of this region, this country, of my family.
We named this show for one of those Arabic words that, well, doesn't really have an English equivalent. But we might consider it a broad genre of Arabic music that's informal but traditional, structured but malleable, tense but warm. Yeah, you'll get a feel for it here. We'll be coming to you every Tuesday with a new episode from our first season, so make sure to follow the show wherever you stream your podcasts so you never miss a beat. See you back here real soon.
We've just heard from Mohammad Abu Sheikh about how companies should pursue AI implementation for better results. But how about the bigger picture? What's still missing in the market? To help us figure out this disconnect between implementing AI and profits, I'm now joined by Amit Joshi. He's a professor of AI, analytics, and marketing at the IMD Business School. Amit, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Salim.
So you've just written a piece for The National about this staggering report from MIT that was released at the end of August. And from their findings, the report stated that about 95% of generative AI investments aren't delivering returns. Why do you think so many companies fail to deliver measurable results from AI developments?
I think a lot of it has to do with the key word that you just used, Salim, measurable results, right? I mean, right now, we're just not sure what we're supposed to measure. We're trying to use old metrics, stuff that we tried to use for other kinds of projects with generative AI, and that generally doesn't transfer. But more importantly, I think the problem is it's not the technology. It's the fact that companies actually are not clear how they're supposed to apply it. So it's more of a strategy issue than a technology issue, in my opinion.
And I would imagine ROI is one of the main measures that they're using to determine whether it's beneficial or not. Is this misguided?
It may not be misguided, but it may be wrongly measured. I mean, especially with a technology like this, how do you measure ROI? How do you measure gain in time, increase in efficiency? It might actually be a little more complex than a relatively simplistic way that some companies might be using. Secondly, there's a time factor. We don't know how long companies are measuring ROI over. Maybe some of the more complex projects will result in positive ROI only over the long run. So I really think that we need to give it more time and we need to put a lot more thought into the projects as well as the measurement in this case.
In the short term now, what should they be looking for in terms of measurements? And also, of course, since revenue is the big goal of all this, how soon do you expect companies to see revenue benefits from their investments in AI?
The second part is a really tough question to answer as to when we would start seeing revenues. As to what they should be doing, my advice to them would be to focus on the process rather than on the outcomes, right? So Are we upskilling? Are we training? Are we really democratizing this tool? Are we making this tool itself available in a safe, usable way to a good number of our employees so that they can go ahead and start applying it and therefore start generating value, whether it's cost saving, increase in revenue, or something else, or better innovation for that matter? And then finally, are we doing all of these things in a well thought through strategic manner that kind of aligns with the overall North Star of the organization? Or are we just doing it in a completely tactical, completely opportunistic way where you see a problem and you throw AI at this? So these are the things in the process perspectives that I would rather worry about right now rather than the outcomes in the immediate term.
So they shouldn't focus on the short-term gains because it's not the investment is for the long haul in terms of actually seeing returns from it.
That's my feeling. Now, having said that, there are a few areas, for example, coding, customer service, low-end marketing metrics, and low-end marketing creatives that they could see relatively quick short-run gains. But for most other really strategic projects, I suspect the gains are only going to reveal themselves in the longer run.
For our listeners, can you paint a picture of what doing it right looks like? Has anyone done it? Do you have any examples that you could share?
Of course, there are several companies that I work with, including some that are in the region that have done really well. So there's a bank in Southeast Asia that I'm working with that has done an amazing job with this. And the way they did it, like I said, is a very clear, thought through strategy of exactly where they want to. But more importantly, because it's a bank, highly regulated business, where they will not use this particular technology. There's a pharma company that I'm working with that has a heavy footprint in the Middle East, in the GCC region, that has very clear use cases, including personalization, that they base off of this. And once they do that, they measure personalization that eventually leads to revenues rather than the revenues themselves. So they're actually figuring out a way to measure the process changes that'll eventually lead to revenue. So there are some really positive examples of organizations that are starting to figure it out.
And are there critical questions that executives should be asking right now to move past the front-facing presentations and I guess what we're seeing is like the hype of AI to get real AI value?
So I think what they should be looking at right now is, are we just letting 1,000 flowers bloom, in which case, we've got projects all over the place with none really scaling? Or are we really thoughtfully picking projects that will add value in the long run, and more importantly, that will scale across the organization? There's no point having little projects that don't really add overall value, that might solve a local problem, that might solve a tactical issue, but they never have a chance of scaling. Those are not the projects they should be looking at. They should be asking themselves, are we focusing on the right problems that not only align with our overall strategy, but are scalable from the get-go?
And how do you determine that usually?
So you need to make a understanding, you need to make a definition of scalability when you start the project, not when the proof of concept has already been done and when that has proven successful, because that's often when companies realize that, oh, this project was perfect for a proof of concept. It was never going to scale because we never had the data, because we never had the skills, we didn't have the resources, etc. So you need to do it on day one, not when the project is already underway.
Actually, I think I've heard that so many times in terms of when speaking about AI, the foundational step is data and understanding it and training it properly. Otherwise, your tower is going to fall if that foundation doesn't exist. And looking at future possibilities, you mentioned in your article, Sam Altman's statement that disappointment in the AI market might lead to a global slowdown, given that we're seeing rapid AI growth, NVIDIA, reaching company value numbers that have not been seen before. Do you think that if investment goes the wrong way and companies don't, I guess, invest right in AI, that we could be leading to a AI winter?
That is a fear. That is definitely a fear. Currently, the AI technology, if you want to call it a bubble, really has been hyped up. And my concern is not so much that this bubble is hyped up, but that this bubble has sucked up funding from all the other technologies that might perhaps also be equally useful tomorrow. And then the fear is exactly like you said, Salim, which is that if the air gets sucked out of this, right? If this bubble collapses, then we will see a massive collapse in funding for this technology. And because other technologies are already relatively underfunded, this could portend an AI winter. I really hope it does not happen. But there are some signs that, at least technologically, AI has started slowing down, or the increase in performance of this tool has started slowing down a bit.
And what are some of those supporting technologies that we should be also investing in right now? That's very interesting.
I mean, there's just other types of machine learning techniques besides the transformer, which is what drives generative AI that could need attention. Quantum, or commercializing quantum, would be something else. And there's a few other technologies that scientists are talking about. But once again, we just don't have enough bandwidth to give to these other technologies and ideas, because this particular boom has sucked up literally trillions and trillions of dollars of capital.
Amit, thank you so much. This was really insightful. I appreciate your time. How does all of this affect how companies hire AI specialists or attract talent? In the UAE, for example, the country aims to become a global AI hub, but is struggling with a shortage of talent, like much of the world, to reach its goal. To understand more about this, we're joined now by our own Dana Alomar, future editor here at The National. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
You've been looking into one very specific but very important part of the AI ecosystem, and that's salaries. Tell us what you found.
So locally, basically recruiters are confident that the country, the UAE, is competitive. So basically John Armstrong, who I spoke to a few days ago, he's a Dubai-based recruiter. And he told me that a senior AI engineer can expect to earn approximately $420,000 a year, and that's tax-free, which makes it extremely attractive. But when you look at industry data, especially from levels.fyi, the US still pays more in absolute terms. AI engineers there earn a median of about $890,000 a year, and a Google or a fast-growing startup, for an engineer working there, it goes to 1 million dirhams a year. So the UAE isn't technically matching that level yet, but the structure here is different. More cash and allowances rather than equity, which also appeals to some professionals. And other than that, of course, it's tax-free, and there are many other benefits in the UAE than just compared to the US.
And talent is critical to develop this sector. And Dana, so you spoke to hiring managers that need to hire talent to be able to progress their AI businesses. Can you describe what's the talent pool looking like, and are there actually people out there to fill these openings?
So that's where the real challenge comes in. Recruiters told me demand far outpaces supply, both globally and in the UAE. It's a fast-growing sector, but it's also fresh and brand new. So companies here are competing for a very small pool of talent. So telecoms and cybersecurity are two areas where the shortage is particularly visible. And firms are actively hunting for AI architects. I never thought that AI architects were a thing. And developers with skills like TensorFlow and Python. Python is a programming language, and TensorFlow is one of those most popular toolkits you can run in that language to actually build AI models. Obviously, to fill those gaps, many companies are doing international recruitment drives, leaning on golden visas and investing heavily in training and reskilling existing staff. But universities like Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI and Harriet Watt are also building academic pipelines to help bridge the skill gap.
MIT recently published a report that said investments in AI aren't turning around nearly as much as anticipated, essentially saying they don't know how to use AI in their companies. This is news that's shaken tech investors. So based on your reporting, is it clear how much of salary and talent is determined or impacted by investment?
So that's a really important question, but we need to remember that the UAE, or the region, the Gulf region, is quite different than the US. So in the UAE, government investment has been very top-down and strategic. So the immediate pressure on salaries hasn't really come from whether a company's returns look good or not. Instead, it's about long-term positioning. That said, of course, if global investors or even locals start pulling back, it could affect the private sector's ability to sustain high salaries, especially for very niche roles like AI product managers. However, more broadly, if the return on investment is slower than expected, it could push companies to focus more on applied AI, making products and services usable right now rather than pouring resources into pure research. That in turn shapes the type of talent they're hiring for. Nevertheless, though, universities and businesses do work hand in hand. Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI works with other businesses on pure research, and they both benefit. It's a win-win situation. And lastly, when I spoke a few months ago to the executive chairman of WAMDA, Fadi Ghandour, he said, for the UAE, they never have trouble getting investment in terms of AI or the industry as a whole. They are abundant with that, actually. They have an abundance of AI engineers, and they're really investing in whether it's education, AI platforms, or R&D as a whole.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Business Extra from The National. Make sure to check out The National's podcast wherever you stream. This episode was produced by Yasmin Al-Taji. Arthur Edison is our audio engineer. Our podcast editor is Duat Farid. And I've been your host, Salim Essaid.